everyone, what's up? It's me, Dr. B, Dr. Bacibianco. I am so excited to return and bring you the trailer of my new podcast, which is called Queerstories of Recovery, Voices from the Margin. It's a bit of a kickoff from my podcast that I founded in 2018, which was called Voices from Rock Bottom. That was produced by Makeup Park Radio in New York City. However, this time, it's just me on Riverside. So I'm very excited, again, to launch this podcast. It comes out of my research. As you know, I'm an interdisciplinary scholar that specifically works with addiction recovery rhetoric. And this is sort of part of my book, which is really nice because Voices from Rock Bottom was part of my dissertation project. And now Queerstories of Recovery, Voices from the Margin, is a podcast that will be included in one of the chapters of my book. But I am really focused on trying to really elevate queer folks and their voices, like myself, in recovery. And it's a place where we can reclaim the mic and rewrite the script. So again, as some of you may know, my name is Danielle Bacibianco. I'm a queer sober academic. I'm a writer, and I was the founder of Voices from Rock Bottom podcast and the Queerstories of Recovery podcast. And, I want to say both of these projects, starting with Voices from Rock Bottom, these are digital storytelling. I feel like I keep saying the word project. These are digital storytelling practices. I would say where both began with a whisper of resistance, right? I had a mentor when I was talking about my research and early on in my early days of my research and my experiences as somebody who was a queer person in 12-step recovery and a queer person in academia, a queer sober person in academia. And they said, research doesn't whisper. And so I guess the relaunch of the Voices from Rock Bottom podcast into this new podcast of Queerstories of Recovery, Voices from the Margin is taking that whisper and turning it all the way up. So I'm really excited about it. I'm really excited to, invite queer sober academics in this space and even listen. Anyone that has an experience, alternative practices of recovery that are outside the 12-step recovery model, those who are no longer in academia. The goal is to really hold space for our voices that are often erased and silenced by dominant heteronormative recovery cultures like Alcoholics Anonymous and the alcoholic norms of academia. And from my work with Voices from Rock Bottom, this podcast is going to expand on Queer Story, which is my recovery rhetorical methodology that I founded in progress of my dissertation, where I use personal narrative, intersectional critique, and rhetorical resistance. I am someone who very much believes that, sharing authentic recovery experiences, especially in digital public spaces, gives us a renewed focus, right? And especially as somebody who is a queer sober academic, I think that this series will make space for critical conversations at the intersection of recovery, queerness, and institutional exclusion, which I've experienced in both Alcoholics Anonymous as well as in academia. And so I think, if you come hang out with me, you'll probably hear stories that you don't get to either hear or tell at most Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. I also do feel like a big goal of this podcast is to try to speak the truth that even academia tries to polish away. We're in a critical time right now where academia is being dismantled. And, the personal is political and the political is very much political. Let's be real. So I think this podcast coming into scene, especially talking about what it means to be queer and sober in both of these institutionalized spaces in a political climate that is constantly telling us we're too much, we're too messy, we're too complicated. So Queer Stories of Recovery, Voices from the Margin, is here to remind everybody, let's be real, right? Recovery is not a one-size-fits-all model, and neither are we. So each episode, my goal is to bring some queer, sober folks, right? Folks in recovery, people who are artists, scholars, activists, friends, people who have, and continue to navigate sobriety on their own terms, whether they choose to stay in both of these spaces or not. As I invite people on, much like what I did, the work that I did for Voices from Rock Bottom, I'll be inviting people for interviews, personal narratives, and I'm hoping that we'll be able to tap into some raw vulnerability and reflection, because I think if we come together and work together to share what it means to survive, we're creating a space outside of the spaces that weren't built for us, right? And so we're reclaiming not only our voices, but now we're creating activist space. So I believe that this is not just a podcast. I'm sorry if you heard another podcast say that. I do believe that, right? This is a really important work. It's a creative project, but it's also a rhetorical intervention. It's a digital archive, and I say for anybody coming on here who's telling their story, queer and or sober academic, it is a love letter, right? Especially to our friends, our peers, and our colleagues, those who didn't make it. You know, we lose a lot of people, not only in recovery spaces, but also in academia. So I hope we could brave space together. Now, if you're listening to this and you've ever felt out of place in a meeting, or you felt invisible at maybe a university happy hour, right? I got it, been there, right? PhD student, graduate student, I know what it feels like. No, well, now I'm not a student anymore, now I'm beyond. But, you know, we're here, right? I think this is a good place for you. I'm also one of the co-founders of the Sober Academics online initiative. We have meetings that meet weekly on Wednesdays and at 8:30 p.m. and we meet on Discord, right? And so that's like, just so you know that this is the work, right? That sort of has come out of our experiences of feeling like we don't belong, right? We're the voices from the margins. So that's also like another place where we get to come together to share our sober stories. And I think doing it in a podcast form as well allows us to not only have the space to tell our stories, but to search and to hear other stories that sound like our own, you know? Find your people, right? That's what we're doing. Try to find your people. So anyways, let me get down to business. So the big launch for Queer Stories of Recovery, Voices from the Margin, it drops. The first actual episode drops on September 5th. I'll be sharing the links for you to follow on the socials, to subscribe on where the podcasts are listened to. I don't want to promo any places yet because I'm not really sure exactly where this is going to live. But either way, know that your story belongs here on Queer Voices of Recovery, Voices from the Margins, right? And yeah, that's pretty much it. A little bit about me, real quick. I currently teach as an adjunct at public college in New Jersey. I was going to name it, but then I said to myself, let me not name it just yet. I live in New Jersey, which is weird because I was born and raised in Brooklyn, and you can hear that accent. That doesn't go anywhere. I transplanted to Staten Island. I've lived in Queens. I mean, I feel like I've gone everywhere, right? I've been everywhere. Before I started, doing research and completing a doctorate and teaching, college writing courses, and interdisciplinary research courses, and now I'm also teaching women, gender, and sexuality studies courses. I was a middle school teacher in Brooklyn, and felt like I needed to do more. Always a big shout out to the teachers who are in the trenches in secondary education. I feel you. Aside from that, I'm trying to do this work. I'm constantly thinking about how to reimagine recovery through queer, feminist, and intersectional storytelling. And though I took a little bit of a hiatus after completing my doctorate, my body was like, sleep. I love podcasting. I love talking to people. I love connecting, and community is my love language. And so I hope that Queer Stories of Recovery really affirms that sort of model, right? Of solidarity, of scholarship, of survival where it counts, you know? In my personal life and even political life, professional life, I'm always trying to do activist work. I believe it's very important to continue to challenge and even subvert normative narratives that are both in academia and in recovery. So, you know, hey, listen, you know, I am one voice amongst many people who are trying to create public platforms that are trying to do the important work. But I hope that, you know, Queer Stories of Recovery, Voices from the Margin, can bring a different spin on the recovery podcasts that are out there. You know, again, my experience is that much like academia, much like other institutions in my life, I've been told that surviving means to blend in, you know, and, you know, still to this day, 2025, even though there has been much progress within certain institutions of recovery, mainstream recovery spaces continue to silence and erase queer voices. And from my experience in academia, I could tell you that academia rewards intoxication, but punishes sobriety, right? Which is weird, right? Like, it's like we're promoting this thing. We know academic burnout. There's so many labor issues. Okay, we got to save that for another episode. I can't do all of that, right? That's why I'm inviting people on. That's why I'm having interviews. But the reality is it's really both of these sort of like ableist models of like rewarding these like sort of like patriarchal traditions. So I think that's why this podcast is going to speak in a way that others might not have already. So anyways, that's it. That's a bit out of what I want to say for today. I hope that was a good enough trailer. I think about 12 minutes is good enough. Again, I'll be sharing all the infos, places that you can follow this podcast. And stay tuned again. September 5th is the official launch. I'll be posting this information to my website, which is drdaniellebacibianco.com. That's a mouthful. I'll post the info here as well. And on my socials, which you could follow me on the gram, on the Sky. Yeah, that's about it. I'm not really on anything else. Oh, on the Book of the Faces, which is at DRPROFB, which is Dr. Prof B. So yeah, I'm really excited. Can't wait. Thank you all for listening and hanging with me today. And I hope everyone has a great day. I'm back. Dr. B is back. Whoop, 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 whoop. And also you'll see that I have a lot of addiction recovery books in the background and some really cool like archival. But I just want to shout out this. One of my students created this, Shafali Roy. Got to own, right? You got to give that credit to the person that created this. And this is sort of like an example of like the stuff that students are like creating and thinking about in my classes. We get to have a lot of fun and try to do that sort of like work, right? So as you can see, in all of these places, I'm thinking about addiction recovery activism, thinking about recovery rhetoric, what that means in and out of these spaces and beyond these institutional walls. So that's enough out of me. I hope everybody has a great day. See you on September 5th. What?